morning, everyone. My name is Irena Cvetkovic, and I will be moderating the first panel named Transformation of Policy-Making Approaches in the Age of Environmental Catastrophe. We have 4 people on this panel. It's Ljubica Slavković, Ana Mendez Dandes, Filip Stojanovski, and Tomislav Vukoja. My name is, as I said, Irena Cvetkovic. I come from a field of gender studies as an activist, professor, and also researcher. So you can see from my bio that is available somewhere in the materials that I actually have none knowledge and experience in this topic. So I guess the idea of even of us to have this more of a curiosity moderator, someone who will ask maybe stupid questions, but kind of like use me as a translator to a broader public, not an audience that is really professional and maybe expert in every of the field that is represented here on this panel. So bear with me. I'm sure that the speakers will be excellent. However, the moderating will be at least interesting. Without further ado, I will start introducing one by one our speakers. We jointly agreed on having 2 rounds of questions, and then we will open the Q&A session. So our first speaker is Ljubica Slavković with an impressive bio. She's a graduated student and a PhD candidate, fellow researcher and teaching assistant in the Faculty of Architecture, University of Belgrade. So since 2014, she is a project manager and an author of the Center for Cultural Decontamination, where she leads the program cycle Understanding the City, focused on urban planning, politics, and production of space, strengthening knowledge, critical thinking, and action and participation. She is also co-founder of expert organization Nova Planska Praksa, New Planning Practice, founded in 2021, so a recent one, and she's active as a researcher and had published several books and also co-author of over 100 articles and chapters for domestic and foreign publications. Okay, she had some other prizes that maybe we can talk about later. However, while preparing on this panel, I was reading a bit, and it's really interesting topic. From an ethical perspective, the biggest difficulty maybe for planners is to take the best approach in responding to decision makers, but while also acting in public interest, because it's always been kind of like dynamic between on the other hand, on one hand, the governmental change, and on the other hand, the societal change. And even though many debates are, as I can see, arising regarding its existence, for planners and in general for planning professions, the public interest has always been legitimizing principle as a norm of practice. So could you please elaborate more on this issue of urban and spatial planning in relation to defining but also implementing public interest, public goods, or urban commons?
Thank you for having me here, and thank you for the introduction and interesting question. It is quite actually a complicated question, but we're not going to go into details. I will try to give you, let's say, an overview of this problematic in a form of a little story that will maybe successfully connect culture, policy making, public interest, urban planning, and so on. But first of all, I want to try to answer quite simply to your question. You're definitely right. Urban public interest is a legitimizing principle of urban planning, so it's a really strong term, but that we can say that has almost no meaning at all. And that's the main paradox that we're dealing with, that we are so broadly using this term, but without actually defining it, without actually, as a society, as urban planners, as policymakers, defining and knowing what this term means. I will talk about that a bit later on. The little story I wanted to present to you is how did we, me and my team from Nova Planska Praksa, from CZKD and even broader one, how did we even begin to deal with this topic of public interest and how is all of this related? A couple of years ago, in 2018 or 19, we started a project in Center for Cultural Decontamination called Toward Collaborative Governance. And as some of you know, Center for Cultural Decontamination is an independent, first of all, cultural institution founded in 1995 that emerged from this anti-war paradigm and principle and so on, so anti-sexism and whatever, anti-war, you know what I mean, not to go into details. It represents a long struggle for maintaining a free public space in a way, a free and independent space, physical space. So what I'm trying to say is this almost 30 years of CZKD's existence is strongly connected with this struggle for providing and having a physical, independent public space. And so this struggle for having for running an independent space has become one of our main interests, along with this cultural production. So we went into field of urban planning in more detail. And you have this cultural institution that now it's in the field of urban planning. This is a connection I want to emphasize. So as CZKD is having a lot of public programs and projects and working with all kind of different audiences, and our motto is that it's a place where people come to feel free and a place where you can, when people who usually wouldn't meet can come and meet together. We started a series of debates, programs, workshops on in urban planning. And one of our main interests was to deal with this constant and rising conflicts we have in public space, in urban planning, in construction, because our cities became, well, war field, how do you say? I mean, we have conflicts rising on literally every construction project. But our focus was not in, mainly, was not in these conflicts that occur on the field, like the end of the process, but how do they occur like earlier in this process of urban planning? Not to go into details of that, we published this publication where we analyze how the decisions are made and from different points of perspective and so on. And we have a lot of chronologists and so on, and we have a lot of different case studies. And we had a lot of debates trying to, as I said, to connect people who usually wouldn't meet, to sit together and to present their different perspectives. So one of them was called Urbanism of Conflicted Interests. And after years of working on this project and going into all these different details, we came to several conclusions. One of them being, of course, that the decisions are made long before any participating processes, so behind closed doors and so on, and that we as a society are actually not participating in these procedures, but that the conflicts occur, of course, on this topic of public interest. So we published this publication, which was actually awarded last month by the Salon of Architecture, and I find this to be super interesting because it's quite unusual that the Salon of Architecture is giving a Grand Prix award to a publication on public interest in the field of urban planning that was actually done by a civil sector organization. And I found this to be really a shift in our practice, at least hopefully in our society as well. And in this publication, we presented this topic of public interest from different perspectives and so on, from defining this term, as you mentioned before. And we opened the rethinking of how do we define this term, realizing that that's the first obstacle we have, as I said at the beginning, that our policymakers, our urban planners, our colleagues, our professors, our society, is not working enough on defining this term, but we are constantly acting as we all know what it means. Then we went into different perspectives. What is the role of urban planners in implementing this term? And as we saw in our previous work, urban planners actually do not have a lot of power, because in our society, all the decisions are made before and are just like these inputs that urban planners have. They can to make it simple, what urban planners in our practice can do is make good plans or bad plans, but actually all the inputs are already given before, so there is not actually this rethinking the public interest is not actually happening in making these plans. Then we went into discussing how is protecting our environment a public interest, and what legal rights do we have on that topic. And I mean, not to go into details, we can talk about it later, but also there is a lot of obstacles we have there. There are some basic rights we have, but they are not enough. We went into making some recommendations for participation processes, how we as citizens can act on defining, implementing this public interest. And we made some really concrete recommendations. So when you read them, you can say like, okay, well, this is like common reason, you know, like these recommendations are really basic stuff. But this basic stuff is something that we are not practicing, and something that we have to start practicing, which is actually within our legal framework. So it's only a matter of will of governmental system to implement this recommendations. So what I'm trying to say is that this topic of public interest is really complex, and we have to approach it from all kind of different aspects, from redefining it to different roles we have as professions, as society in implementing it and defending it, to really working together on all kind of different steps that we can make in actually implementing public interest. But one more thing I would like to point out in this. When we made all of these debates, there was one thing that was particularly interesting to me, is that also we as a civil sector are tending to speak about public interest as one, as if there is this one public interest. But it is actually, and especially in the last 20 years with this transition from post-Yugoslav to whatever we are now, peripheral autocratic capitalism, or whatever it is, there is this pluralism of interest in all different sectors, in all different perspectives. And in our debates, I saw that we have citizens who don't agree on what is public interest. And we have to have a debate and discussion also on that. And we have people from audiences saying, why are you talking about urbanism of conflicting interests? There is only one public interest. At the same time, while they are presenting different interests who are conflicting. So what I'm trying to say is that, we need to, first of all, we need to redefine this term and what are our roles in it. And there is also some things I would like to add, but I will do that after your second question. I hope this was enough.
Yes, it is, but it is enough. But however, you opened so many sub questions. I have been part of Freedom Square, protesting against urban plans due to occupation of public space on most of the occasion for commercial, of course, and nation building purposes. So even within what you're saying, it is so difficult. You always have the opposition. There are always tension within society to define what is public interest. So within this tension, what are your positions on practicing participation and principles of good governance? How to do this within this situation?
It's also a really hard question, actually. That's why I mean, I brought these books here for a reason. There are actually some answers in them. We did this together with Eva over there and Poleko. We did this research in this publication, Public at a Distance, Democracy at Crisis, where we analyzed the public urban planning procedures in the period of pandemic. To make a long story short, one of our main conclusions was that the pandemic period, of course, emphasized what is actually a normal practice, and that is that our participation is just pro form, is just we don't have a real participation. So we as citizens, as experts, I mean, you all know that, of course, are actually, we don't have, most of the time we cannot influence these decisions in these urban planning procedures. But where does that come from? One of the main problems is that in this, again, to put it simple, in these processes of joining European Union, we are implementing a lot of policy changes in order to meet these demands, in order to appear as a democratic societies and so on. But we are not, how to say it, we are not actually practicing them. So we have a lot of changes that are supposed to, legal changes that are supposed to provide participation procedures to, we have public insight in urban plans, early public insight, all kind of discussions and so on. So on paper, we have these processes and procedures. But what happens in practice is that there is no participation. It's just ticking boxes. And at the end of the day, you have citizens and experts actually feeling powerless because you have like tick boxes and all these legal procedures and everything is fine and everything looks like democratic and so on, but you are actually powerless. So as I said before, I really do think that our urban planners do not have enough power in actually the urban planning procedures, that the decisions are made behind closed doors way early in these processes, and that we as a society, as activists, as experts, have to be strong in participating in these procedures, although they feel pointless, and we have to use all the legal ways we have to participate, but also to insist on the contents of these procedures, not only on forms, what I'm trying to say, but also to try to understand these plans, to try to understand these procedures, and not to just participate in ticking boxes, but to, in all ways we have, from institutionals to going out in the street, to work on making these procedures respect, how do you say, like the content of defending and implementing and defining public interests. So not to make pro-form participation, but really like meaningful participation, which is super difficult. But what I'm trying to say is that, yeah, that's the only way we can go. So yeah, continue doing that, please.
Thank you, Ljubica. I think your contribution here was very valuable, and you more or less we all feel the same when it comes to following the public interest and urban planning, and we have challenges within our own cities and our own countries on this issue. Okay, moving to the next speaker, Ana Mendez de Andes. She's an activist, but she's also an architect and urban planner. She has carried out her professional and teaching experience in landscape and urban design in Madrid, Amsterdam, London, and Shanghai. I really like that she has been involved in Militant Research Collective, and she has been part of Spanish municipality Bagger, launched in 2014, and acted as advisor to the cultural department of the Madrid City Council. Ana, we have spoke very briefly before this panel, and thanks to you, I think I have been familiarized with some researches, And I think the topic you will add here to this conversation, the topic of green political framework, which maybe now it's more important than ever. I somehow feel like that. So thanks to you, I become familiar with this project called the Living Well Within Limits, the LILY project, that opens very interesting questions, such as what are the biophysical resources, more specifically energy, required to achieve human well-being? What influence do social and technical provisions systems have on the level of resource use associated with well-being? So I think one dilemma within my head while reading some of the findings of this project was if remaining within planetary boundaries requires now, as I said, more than ever, decrease in resources and energy, how could these scarce resources now be best employed to enhance and perceive human well-being? I think the topic of well-being is very interested, framed within the topic of bounded economy. So could you please elaborate more on the relevance of these provisioning systems that act as mediators between the biophysical inputs and what is called the social outcomes? Yeah.
Okay, this one. Well, first of all, I had the feeling, listening to Luba, that I have to make clear that I come from somewhere else. Like this, of course, Madrid is somewhere else and Sheffield is somewhere else. But in terms of political struggles, I don't know how familiar you are with the Spanish situation, but in Spain, we went to this our own declination of what does the public interest mean. That was not around public interest, but about democracy. This happened in 2011. In 2011, the Square movements created a general common sense in the whole country where 85% of the population agree with the slogans of the May 15 movement. That was, A, this is not a real democracy. So who defines public interest? B, they call it a crisis, but it is a con. So we have been cheated. And the third one is we are not merchandise on the hands of politicians and bankers, which means the economic and the political levels are working together. This led to this municipalist wager, the institutional assault that launched in 2014, first with the new party, national party called Podemos, which I think would translate like Mosimo, probably. Yeah. And then with the municipalist platform that presented to the elections in 2015, hundreds of cities all across Spain, and won the government in cities like Madrid, Barcelona, but also Zaragoza, Valencia, to the point that more than 1/3 of the Spanish population was, in a certain point, living under a local government that called themselves municipalists, which is the colonial feminist, common base, we could call it, anti-capitalist approach, etc., etc. So, what I'm going to talk from is to a position where me, my colleagues, my comrades, for many years of struggle, we were in power, right? So we were trying to implement this. We actually were trying to do this question of, hey, how do we do meaningful participatory process? How are we going to define public interest altogether? And what? So I come from that struggle. I come from the struggle of being in the institution, and actually realize that, you know what? You also don't have the power there. Having the government doesn't mean that you have the power. This is something that we knew from the Latin American also left governments, but we knew it. But we had to work with it. In this context, I'm doing my PhD now on how to actually incorporate commoning and urban commons in planning. And I've been doing questions, reading things, asking people in Barcelona, which is actually after 2019, basically the only municipalist government that was left. This is a whole story we can talk, during the beers. I cross in this thing with this project. No? Julia Steinberger, I don't know if you know her, but she's one of the lead authors of the IPCC report, environmental scientists, and then they put this question: how do we live well within limits? And then if you go to the website, you will see this diagram. It's like, okay, we have the biophysical inputs, we have the societal outcomes. In the middle, we have the provisioning systems, which are, in its way, infrastructures, technical and physical, but also social. And there was this tweet, and then she says, I have learned a lot from this project. Thank you, everybody, blah, blah, blah. I am going to shift my focus on research. So it is not anymore about, as Ivana said in the presentation, it's not anymore about the scientist, attached to the fact, showing how this thing could work in terms of energy, efficiency, I don't know, carbon footprint, whatever. And it's not about the cultural, outcomes, the societal outcomes. The key is in the provisioning system. Either we have a democratic system of providing this, or we are not going to get anywhere. For me, this is very interesting for mainly four aspects. One is, to me, it speaks of the commons. It is talking about commons and commoning. It is talking about how we manage a certain kind of resources which are scarce. To the good of a community, which, as you said, is multiple. This is not a community. There is an overlapping of community, different scale, different aspects, different backgrounds, different needs on negotiation, but how the governance of this is the key issue. It doesn't matter if we retrofit every single building in this planet, if we are not going to make this collective management, the collective decisions about this. It's not a commons as we are managing this, housing as a commons, but we are managing the decision about the housing as a commons. That's like another level, right? It's not the single project. It's the concept of how are we going to organize as a society. The second part, also Ljubica said it before, is the mediator. It is in the middle. How is this, how do we put ourselves, how do we think of ourselves as the mediators between needs, the mediators we were talking last week in Barcelona between bottom-up and top-down decisions. No, like this works better, it doesn't work, it's efficient, it's inefficient. I'm saying like, guys, we meet in the middle, it doesn't matter. Maybe some projects have to go from the top to down for whatever reasons, and some others they were, but it's not, because there are points where you don't touch. It doesn't matter how you launch this top down. There is something at the bottom that goes beyond the down. And if you go bottom up, there is something at the top that goes beyond the up. And you have to be there in the middle. The third thing that I like about this, but I think it's powerful and is challenging, is this thing that it is possible to live well within the limits. We can make it, guys. And this is like a counter. I'm talking to a convinced audience here. We know that we can make it, but in general, we have the feeling there is a lot of discussion right now about future and utopias. I am interested about future and utopias. And the reason is like neoliberal thinking comes coupling with this idea of the end of history, which actually was also the end of the future. We are enabled to think, famously, it's easier to think the end of the world than the end of capitalism. But to get out of that, to get out of this impossibility of thinking another way of organizing, I think that specifically in participatory processing planning, my experience, what I'm looking at now, is that we are somehow trying to fit a new paradigm in an old structure. We are constrained to use certain kind of tools in urban planning as well, where something that is multiple, dynamic, has different levels, have to fit in this linear process where at the end, it is a linear process that actually comes to a specific product. And the idea in urban planning and in architecture for a long time, the tradition is to provide an image of a better future. This is how we are thought. You have to write a plan at the end of the day. How can we make a plan which is focused on the process and is focused on the values and the principles that we share, the values that we share, the principles that we have to apply in any specific project, and then the rules in a way that then we can be, on the one hand, flexible enough to accommodate all these negotiations and to incorporate all these new changes, but that we are defining a process that is not any process. It is a specific process of politicization and realization of the world that we need in order to live well within limits. There was a fourth one. This is also interesting. It's like this that we are doing is not because we are good people. It's not because we are, morally superior. It's not an ethical question. But I think this project by Julia Steinberg said this is what we need to do. It is based on needs. It is based on what are the kind of processes that we need to implement, taking decisions about the scarce resources. This is, common, this is everywhere, in order to have a better life, because it matters. It matters what kind of future we are going to have, and it regardless if it's 1.3 or 1.5 or 0.8 or 2, it matters. It's going to be a very different situation, regardless the change that is going to happen anyway.
Let me just ask you, where within this are the cultural policy and cultural activities? I mean, the cultural policies can be considered as those social outcomes that need to be translated within these planetary biophysical inputs. And we talked, and you said that cultural activities, especially those on the margins, which I find it very enlightening, contribute to the political knowledge and, even more important, imaginary, able to shape the environmental communities in Habi. So could you just bring this culture topic within this discussion, and also maybe share with us about your experience in Madrid City Council, especially the role of, with focus on the role of public institutions as supporting structure for culture and artistic activities?
This is not an easy question. This institutional assault, the municipalist wager, had different shapes. It was, again, very different configurations in different places and cities. You might know of the shining example of Barcelona en Común. Ada Colau, mayor of Barcelona, came from the struggle of the anti-eviction movement in the housing struggles. In Madrid, the configuration actually of the social movements, together with Podemos again, was coming from independent, over the margin cultures. Was basically a collective from a squatted social center called Patio Maravillas, and people from independent publishing house and bookshop called Traficantes de Sueños, both deeply rooted in open source and copyleft culture. One of these groups, the squatters, ended up having the cultural department, and of course, cultural war happened. But that's, again, is another story. What we tried was to look at culture from this point of view of the commons, and again, not to focus so much, and there is amazing work done there, on the relation with the biophysical inputs, but in relation with the governance. How are we going to govern this, if we are in charge of cultural production, or at least at the local level in the city? So we, and why this was interesting, why we thought this was key, is because it's one of these social outcomes that have the capacity to go to the edge, to go to this place where we are not yet there, but also to take the activities and the spirit and the knowledge and the political position of people that in our position, in that moment in Madrid, was not so important to look at the artistic production, but at the cultural production, in the sense that we were not there to kind of not even judge or have an opinion about the product, but to set up the processes. So I think that the two main things that we did was, one is this thing of thinking what are the different kind of resources that we held, to look at it like, okay, what do we have? We have spaces, we have money, but we also have like immaterial capital. The recognition or the support of the city council has a lot of capacity also to give and to organize. My role there, actually, I was like, we call it the strategic planning. So I was trying to align the discourse with the budget and with the programs. So we were trying to say, okay, these are all the different budgets. This is what we can provide, and we are trying to expand this field, expand it in the territory. Okay, Spain in general, but Madrid, of course, is very centralized. Expanding in the kind of communities that have access to this resource. Expanding in terms of mere money, like we triple, the money to the projects. So this is one thing that we did. And the other thing that we did was to set up principles of then, again, what are, on all these different levels of the resources, what are the levels of the decision? And what are the communities that are affected and that have to have a say? Because when you, Madrid has 3.6 million inhabitants. I mean, it is the biggest municipality in Spain and in Europe. And it is complicated to think as the state that you can have one rule, like the Lord of the Kings, one rule, to have one idea, to have one concept, to have one policy that actually are going to apply to this incredible multiplicity. And we wanted to avoid this Leviathanitic, procedure of the state that goes and reduces the multiplicity to one decision or to one policy. So that was, it was hard. It was difficult. We actually had to stop for different reasons the experiment midway. But what's interesting is that most of those cities actually appointed people from the field. They appointed people that were experts or somehow were related to the cultural industries. And Madrid was the only city where, squatters were in charge of culture. And I think it was a very valuable experiment that was not, completed somehow.
Thank you, Anna. Moving to the next speaker is Tomislav Vukoja. He's, as he says, an ordinary citizen, trade union activist, and human rights activist with very interesting biography due to decision of his former mayor to hand over the city land in order to build yet another impersonal big building. Tomislav became also a local activist who, together with the residents in his neighborhood, is fighting against investors. So realizing that he could organize himself politically, he entered the local city council. Last year, he ran again, and he has been selected as president of the local city council. He's part of this platform Možemo. I think most of us, especially here in Macedonia, are familiar with. We have been following what you're doing, and our media was also more or less very interested in what you are doing. So we would like to hear more about your visionary and transformative side of your platform, Možemo. I would be very personally interested to hear what are the reasons for transforming from civil movement into some kind of policy-making body. What are the reasons behind it, or maybe pros and cons, if you can share? And while we are on the topic, it will be interesting to hear from you about the ways in which your platform, Možemo, has started to transform the system within especially with focus on these processes of decision making and policy making.
Hi, thank you for inviting me. I'm very excited to be here. Last Saturday we have a similar debate about vision of part of the city where I live in Novi Zagreb or New Zagreb in Museum of Contemporary Art. So it's what I want to talk about today is our struggles and attempts to change the situation, first of all, in our capital, Zagreb. But in Zagreb and in Croatia, and I think it's on all the Balkans, this participations of citizens in decisions is reduced almost exclusively to vote in elections. And after the elections, people are left to the decisions of the ruling party to the end of the mandate. We have starting point of program in Zagreb. To what is with our presentation? Yeah, okay. So, is it work? Okay. So our goals for Zagreb is to become responsible and efficient, partnership and participatory for the citizens, green and developmental, righteous and accessible, and of course polycentric. Starting point of our program in Zagreb is a turn city management model, of course. So there are just some of points of our plan in Zagreb. Quality labor standards and professional employment in city services, setting up the foundation of the circular economy, redirect Zagreb towards renewable energy, increasing public green spaces and preserving streams and afforestation, make the planning process more accessible by changing procedures and digital tools, rebuild, strengthen the earthquake-damaged city in terms of construction and energy, expand the tram network and reduce congestion, and the special topic of this conference is fair spatial planning. So in Zagreb we have a local, so-called local self-government that should serve to communicate from citizens to the administration, so bottom up. We have two levels of local self-governments, is divided to 280 local neighborhoods, who is located in 17 city district councils. And we elect 1,640 members to those councils. So how it works? We have citizens, they have problems. They address their problems to the local neighborhood council. Local neighborhood councils give opinion on that problem, addressed to the local city district council. Local district council gave opinion on the opinion of the local neighborhood council, and they send it to the city offices who is in charge to give a solution to their problem. Mayor, of course, also ask for the opinion of local councils on issues important to the city. You can see this, in this organigram that not going to work very well. The total cost of these two councils, so local neighborhood council and local city district councils, is 11.3 million per year, just for the fees for the members of those councils. So maybe it's expensive, but opinions of those councils is not binding for almost anyone. The city district council is not bound by the opinion of the local neighborhood council. The city assembly also is not obliged to accept of the district city council And mayor, through the executive heads of those city offices, has the ability to influence the decisions made by these offices, and in practice that meant that these decisions very often contrary what the citizens demanded. 11 million euros per year. In constellation of these relations, we could not rely on local self-government or the city, which was served in bottom-up communications of citizens. And that's the reason we are decide to organize ourselves into a local political platform named Zagreb Naš, following the example of Barcelona and Comu, and we want to give it a try in Zagreb. In 2070, our late Mayor Bandic completed his 5th term and ran for another. We decided to turn a group of activists, a lot of beautiful people who have been fighting against its way of governing and destroying the city, into a local political platform that will run in Zagreb elections that year. How will be possible to change these established practices? So this is the composition of city assembly after that elections. If you can see, Milan Bandic, the mayor of Zagreb, and his party won 14 seats. That's the almost 3rd seats in city assembly. Croatian Democratic Union won 7 seats, right-wingers 5 seats, independent list of Sandra Švaljek 8 seats, Social Democratic Union won 13 seats, and Zagreb Naš won 4 seats. So this was our power in city assembly. Of course, mayor formed so-called program coalition with Croatian Democratic Union Party and the right-wingers, and have the majority in city assembly. And when he needed a hand, he was voting a member of assembly from Social Democratic Party and independent list of Sandra Švaljek. Even in such conditions, we had 2 great victories. At the beginning of city assembly, thanks to our political engagement, city assembly unanimously removed the possibility of building a thermal waste treatment plant from the spatial plan of Zagreb, which prevented the construction of a harmful waste treatment technology. Second victory, which I'm personally proud of, is the rejection of amendment to the Zagreb spatial plan. Average citizen of Croatia, Zagreb, Balkan, spatial plans are almost unknown thing, and in fact, they greatly affect of quality of their lives. The last spatial plan in Zagreb was adopted in 2007, have 3 amendments to 2009, 2013, and 2016. In 2020, the mayor, supported by Croatian Democratic Union, proposed another amendment, mostly in favor of private investors. The main goal was to enable Zagreb, what we know in our region as the Belgrade waterfront. It will work according to the same simple principle. The city will clear the area of unnecessary contents, hand over the cleared area to the investor, and then it will build a bunch of lovely buildings. The citizens knew almost nothing about the project itself, except that the mayor made an agreement with a mysterious investor from Emirates, a necessary facility. You can see here, is on 1.1 million square meters is the Zagreb Fair and Hippodrome. But I want to show you something. I live here. Mayor occasionally leaks some information to the media. So we found out that he has an idea to make an endless loop, walking loop on the site of the hippodrome. So citizens, and at that point, usually, most often say, we can do nothing about it.
Yes.
We can do nothing about it. But we were tired of usurpation of public areas and places, and we decided to include that average citizen in the whole story. So, thanks to the experience of Belgrade Waterfront Race, we have taken the following steps. A group of architects and legal experts prepared sets of objections to the spatial plan, and we invited citizens just to sign them. In the meantime, we have communicated through media to those responsible for changing the plan and what damage will be caused by that spatial plan. On the last day of deadline for submitting objections on the plan, we submitted over 5,000 comments to the city administration. They were all rejected, of course, but that we are counting. We organized the largest protest against the mayor, and as the gathered people demanded his resignation, it made his partners from Croatian Democratic Union think, and they refused to support the amendments to the spatial plan. The success of last action restored people faith that things can change, even when you don't have majority in institution, majority in assembly. We had only 4 representatives. And they give us confidence on elections on 2021. And now we are trying to involve citizens in decision making. It is hard because that local self-government is still the same. We have the same people from before. We have problem to tell them what we really want. But we're making small steps forward in situation that we are now in. So we are now lowering the thresholds for the signatures of registered voters who submit a proposal to discussion in City Assembly, and to which they must receive an answer from that same City Assembly. And also we are in process of a new amendment of spatial plan in full cooperation with civil society organizations, initiatives, local councils, and of course the citizens.
So, do you see like a direct link between this so-called big picture, the topics of climate disaster, occupation of public space, public goods, destroy of nature resources, and the various forms that the political reality is taking now? And I mean your Croatian political reality. I would be very interested to see, is there somewhere within these local discussions on local level, the topics of green agenda, etc.?
Yes, I can see it every day. For example, the Ministry of Economy and so-called Sustainable Development in 2019 began issuing concession to the 3/4 of a country for oil and gas exploration. So that means that fracking will be carried out almost everywhere in the country, even in the protected areas such as the Dinara National Nature Park. Unfortunately, at that time, Many civil society organizations have fought against this, but we are in a situation when people struggling to survive, to have normal lives. We are in a situation when in 10 years we lost 500,000 inhabitants. They left to other organized countries. They left to more participative countries. I'm not telling that European Union is great, but when we have a situation like here, so yes, for comparison, in war that we have from 1991 to 1995, the total civil losses were about 25,000. No. Losses in the total civil losses in war was 25,000, and we lost in 10 years 500,000 people in peace.
We can also relate to this. Thank you, Tomislav. It's really valuable to have you on this panel. Last but not least, and I think if you're a moderator, you have to say this on your last speaker. It's Filip Stojanovski. He holds a bachelor degree in mechanical engineering and has broad experience in energy efficiency, renewable energy resources, waste management, and environmental protection. He has more than 10 years experience in the civil society, working as a project manager, coordinator, and project developer. In his professional experience, he participated in, I think, many times in developing scientific studies, research and analysis on different environmental and energy topics. This is what you provide me with the bio, but I think you're familiar, but more also as an activist protesting also some, am I right in Bulgaria?
Basically, we are protesting for environmentally friendly, we want to live in an environment that is healthy for all of us.
Yes, so I was right, okay. With you, I would like to discuss maybe more on the level of awareness among public institutions or the public sector or administration about the scope of this transformative work stemming from the Green Deal or Chapter 27. It is a topic new for me, and I think it's a topic new to the public in general, to the general public. And maybe you can tell us where are we now from 0 to 10 maybe, to align with this EU ETS and other milestones marking progress in the green agenda. I'm sure that we are quite low, but maybe you have some optimism to share with us.
So basically, this is a new thing. I will give a more broader picture. So when we speak about Chapter 27 and Green Deal or Green Agenda for the Western Balkans, there are two different things, because our country, North Macedonia, is aspirant to become EU member states. What does it mean? That we have to fulfill some obligation to become a EU member state. The obligation are the chapters, from Chapter 1 to Chapter 35 or 37, whatever. The Chapter 27 is covered the policy for the environment. So basically, all the policy for environment are included in this chapter. The Chapter 27 is included all media like water, soil, air, industrial pollution, chemicals, climate change, etc., etc. So if we want to become a EU member state, we have to correlate with the other EU administration processes. That means that all the EU administration that it has, we have to have it also, all the institutions, agencies, etc., etc. So basically, these are the policy. And the basic principle of the Chapter 27 is that the polluter has to pay for the pollution that is making in the environment. The second principle is somebody pollute the environment, he has to restore it to the previous condition. And the third principle is we have to maintain the environment or to make it better for the future generation that are coming. So these are the main principles. And all these policies are covered in our national law for environment, climate change, etc., etc. And the other part, the Green Deal and the Green Agenda for the Western Balkans, is a mechanism. I see it as a mechanism to reach the climate neutrality by 2050. The EU wants to reach it. But this is not. This is just an excuse, because we have the previous Paris Agreement where all the states has agreed that we are going to maintain the rise of the temperature by 1.5 degrees, but they do not follow the obligation that they give us, and now they are generating another fund, where the money are going to be spent on the previous strategies that have been obliged and to do it. So basically, when we are speaking the green agenda, it's just a financial mechanism, and the chapter 27 are the policies. And to answer the question, where are we standing, we have to understand what is neutrality, climate neutrality. Basically, as says Anna, we have to live within the bubble and to use less energy. What is the meaning about that? If we want our institution, when we are speaking institution, they are all public institutions, like museum, like ministries, like local self-governments, like schools, like kindergartens. These are the public institutions. And all this public institution has to be clean, not to emit any pollutant. When we are speaking of pollutant, it's not just air pollution. We have waste. The waste is also emitting a pollution. We have the green purchase. We have to maintain, to purchase equipment that is less harmful for the environment. So we have to make a higher concentrates in our state. But I do what do I like at Anna says, in Spain maybe the civil participation it's much higher degree. This is North Macedonia. When we are speaking about the Green Deal in Chapter 27, we are dealing with national policies. We are not feeling that we are part of this system. So we have to bring the policies down to the locals, to the citizens. And this is the main problem in Macedonia. Because also the national policies see Green Agenda as a large investment project, like a railway station, like building waste treatment plants. So basically, the citizens need this, but we are not feeling the same vibe or the same energy that we have to participate for better environment. So basically, we have to lower down the policies so every citizen can understand what we should do together. So basically, I can say you have to make a waste selection. But if we do not educate, if we do not give them the right equipment, we cannot expect that the people can start the selection process. This is the basic principle. And also, another issue is with our politicians. Maybe it's politicians, I'm saying a lot. They are deciding their political decision by getting more votes. That is the main problem. As an example, I will say how it need to be done. In 2014, I think, was allowed to have import of cars with lower Euro standard, let's say Euro 1, Euro 2, Euro 0, it's whatever. So basically, the people were happy that they can buy a cheaper car and to drive it. But what are the implications? This is the most difficult part that the politician has to make it in their heads when they are making decision. They are not counting the health, the human health factor or our well-being. We have imported the cars with low emissions. We have, let's say, our emission sources from that car polluted the air pollution. With the high air pollution, we have more illness. Where we have more illness, we want to make healthier. So we go to where? To the hospitals. So we take money from the hospitals to come better. And what is the other aspect? The children are missing schools. So basically, we are not developing properly. So basically, so with one decision that is thinking right, we are doing many things wrong. So basically, to achieve sustainable institution, it's not the physical thing, energy efficiency, let's say renewable energy sources, green procurement, but we have to change the mindset up. That is the main problem. And I see that we have to work in citizen participation to bring the environment to us, because it's not to be presented by our politician that is very expensive. It's very expensive for me to have a clean water. It's very expensive for me to have a clean air. No, it's not expensive. That is our needs to progress in life. And also the second part of the question, it's about the EU ETC system. It's basically the Europe emission trade scheme. The Europe emission trade scheme is something that has been done to emit less pollution in the air. But in our country, North Macedonia, that is going to be transferred as a carbon pricing. What is carbon pricing? Basically, it's pretty simple. If you pollute with fossil fuels, you have to pay per ton CO2 that you are producing. So basically, if you are using coal, petroleum, gas, you have to pay for the emission that you are emitting. In our projection is to start in 2025, and the projected price is €8 per ton CO2 that is emitted in the air. It is the estimation is that our country is going to make 60 million incomes by charging the carbon pricing, and it's going to rapidly grow. So in 2030, it's going to be €28 per ton, and it is expected to have a revenue about $140 million. And this money should be used for energy transition. So how to shift from coal to energy transition to more renewable energy sources like solar, like wind, like water. So to have a less air pollution into the air. Where we standing with the EU ETS system, I will say positive zero, because it's very far to implement it. We have only the projection, so it's not one, only positive zero.
Okay. Yesterday I was listening to the radio to one professor. Yes, I'm an old soul. I listen to radio, and he was speaking about these issues connected with the war in Ukraine. And I think it's really important topic, but he finished with one sentence that was a bit shocking. He said, our future is not green, our future is black. So I think this is a question that I will ask now. It's worth a dissertation, and I think it's very hard to answer it, but let's try to answer it briefly. Do you think that this could the following of this green agenda happen without, or does it require reshape of policy making and policies themselves? In other words, do you think that ideological shift is a must?
Ideological shift only in the mindset up. The policies are not wrong. We cannot say that the law on environment is not good. The law environment is great, but the problem is in the implementation. If you are polluting, you have to pay for the polluting the air. We cannot compromise, and we cannot look across our eyes that you are not polluting. The green agenda is going to happen when we as a civil society is going to participate more in the decisions, like Anna says. It's not top-down or bottom-up approach. When we are going to feel it, that it's valuable to us, then it's going to happen, the green agenda, the Green Deal, and the Chapter 27. It's not about the politician that they are going to say to you, I'm going to bring you a clean water. No, we have to fight to bring the clean water. We cannot wait for the politician to bring us the clean water. We have to to ask from them to do with our money to have better well-being for ourselves. And yes, the answer, because we have a lot of discussion with the ministry, and the ministry is saying, do not expect clean air this year, because we are going to have our heating central system supplier for central heating. Now it's changing from gas, because it's not going to be gas, to diesel. And from the ministry is saying that you cannot expect economy, ecology, and health to be on the same side.
Thank you,
So
Philip.
I will close it like this.
Yes. So, yeah, I understand. But while fighting with politicians, we should also focus and educate the general public as well.
And also just one example, educating. I was before 2 months ago in Bitola. This is a town in North Macedonia. I have election about air pollution in 4 elementary schools. They were in the last grade or 9th grade. And I will ask, do you think that it's possible to have better future? And they are asking, the answer was no. It's not possible to have. When I ask you where it's better to live, here or in our neighbors, and they are all saying in our neighbors. And I say, why? Then it's cleaner. But my previous question was, what do you want to change in your livelihood? Nothing. Everything is correct. So basically, the mind setup is a little bit.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, I agree totally. I will open the Q&A session, but also I think at the last 10 minutes, maybe we can have for some among yourself to give some reflections. So if anyone is, I don't know who is, do you need microphone or I don't know what is.
Yeah, but can we have some quick remarks
sure.
on what was said? I want to have a couple of remarks, short one. What Anna said about urban planning not being a linear process and so on, I found that to be really interesting. And there might be an answer in theory. Actually, there is in theory of urban planning this planning model called transformative planning. So not a static model of urban planning, but a transformative that changes all the time. I think something like that is the model our countries especially need in constant transition and whatever. So there could be an answer to that. There is a positive note. Also, what Anna said, I think, was really important, that when we talk about public interest, defining and implementing and defending it, we talk about democratic procedures. We talk about democracy. I mean, that's the bottom line. That's where it all starts with what it all ends and so on. And I realize that what we do, and I think all of us are doing that from our own point of view, from our professions. So from my point of view, with our profession, we are trying to improve urban planning processes, procedures, society, to make a societal change in urban planning and so on. But actually, what we're also trying to do is to use the mechanisms, the power, wherever it is that we have, and that on this little pool, to build democracy. So we need democracy in order to improve urban planning and our cities, how we construct our cities and space. But we're also working in this little field we have to give our share of broader image of building democratic procedures. And I think that's something that all of us are doing. We work on this small scale in order to improve the big picture. And it's a circular thing. I just realized that, so I wanted to share. I also wanted to add that there is this interesting link. When Skopje 2014 happened, we all said, like, okay, that Skopje crazy thing happening, and it's in Skopje, it's in North Macedonia.
Local.
It's local. Then when Belgrade waterfront started to happen, I mean, because my mom is from Skopje, so I followed the procedure here, and I was one of the first to say, like, okay, Skopje 2014 is happening here. This is same mechanisms, principles. It was like, no way we're gonna go there, not gonna happen. It kind of happened, and then when Zagreb was working at Belgrade waterfront, it's happening there. Of course, it's not going to happen here. There it went. And the way all of us tried to fight it was looking into Podemos. And it was like, okay, municipal movements, it happened there. We can do it here. So we're all connected, and this share of knowledge and perspectives is also, of course, something really, really important. And one last remark, what you just said about making cultural, about making shift in mindset, that's actually a cultural shift we all need to make, and that's also one of the topics we have here. And it's also similar to what I was saying in urban planning, like what we do is Serbia and North Macedonia and a lot of countries, in trying to join European Union, we import policies without actually creating the, how do you say, the environment, the basic for implementing them meaningfully. It's the same thing with what you were saying. And in order to make a change, we need to make a cultural shift. And yeah, that was the connections I saw in this panel. So that's the remarks I wanted
Such a
to
good
make.
input. Thank you so much. Is there anyone maybe want to comment or ask a question? Okay. I'm following. So,
I don't know, I can comment. Hello, I'm Peđa from Belgrade, and I have a question for Filip. Do Macedonia have a plan for phasing out from coal? Because when we talk about environmental protection, we need to talk about energy sector because it's biggest polluter. Because, for example, Serbia still doesn't have any plan, even after 2050, how to phase out from coal. And other question, I heard about new investments in Macedonia in renewables, but did you have some initiatives for energy democracy? Because we talk a lot about democracy in some other sectors, but also I think with renewables we have great opportunity to democratize also energy sector, which is right now is pretty hierarchical. And actually in Serbia we have some projects like new windmill farms, but this is it's totally foreign investment when you have still hierarchy and local community that doesn't have any influence on this project. And from my knowledge, these same things happen in Croatia, where you also doesn't have any kind of energy democracy. And just one small comment about this carbon trading mechanism and carbon pricing. This is, for me, it's a little bit problematical because you talking about that in last 20 years, but it doesn't working. It's look like that you want to solve problem of this neoliberal economy with also neoliberal approach, like we will trade and you always have some kind of loopholes and leaking of CO2 emission, and actually most of emission in EU, they didn't decrease so much, but they are outsourced outside the EU, which is still problematical mechanism for me. Thanks.
Okay, great question. Okay, great question. Thank you. Macedonia has phase-out phase, but the problem is that it's prolonged because the plan was the last thermal plant that is in Bitola to phase out in 2030 and to make a shift to gas. But basically now when the economic crisis has arisen, there are also the thinking is to open a new pit mine and to use it again coal. That is the problem. And the paradox by our government is to apply to the green agenda as a project to open a new pit mine. This is the paradox. I'm not saying that EU is going to allow it, but the paradox is we are talking about climate neutrality and our government is applying a project for a new open pit mine that is going to be on coal. And also for the energy democracy, we are not talking about here for energy democracy, we are now talking about energy transition. Maybe this is our focus. So basically we are focusing on the region in Bitola and in Kičevo, where we have the thermal plants and we are making the energy transition, how the people that are going to lose their job because they are working on thermal plants, how to adapt it to the new to the new condition that are going to arrive, and also basically the area where was the open pit mine in Kičevo is used as area to invest in solar or PV installation to produce electricity from them. And I also didn't want to tackle the carbon pricing that you have mentioned because I think that Macedonia is irrelevant to the emissions that they are providing on the global level. So basically, I was focused only for the carbon pricing that are emitting in our country. Thank you.
There was a question for me, sorry. Sorry, I didn't catch it.
Okay.
Hello, I'm Zoran from Belgrade. Actually, Petra asked the same question as I wanted to ask Philip. It's about carbon pricing, but I put it into different context. You say that it's some kind of, let's say, national thing, but I don't think so. I think it's really kind of part of global circulation of capital. So, so what could be an example? You know, it becomes part of the trade. You know. And there is no way to stop the flux of the capital, you know. So my term would be like this could be a possibility for another global redistribution of pollution, you know. Someone else will take over your kind of bonds or whatever, because this will go also on the stock exchange. And what will happen then, you know, how to fight it, you know. It's not just simply paying, you know, for the carbon emission or whatever. So this is one, practically repeating the similar topic, but I didn't hear a proper answer. And then I think, you know, again, when about this discussion that Ljubica and Anna were engaged in, I still think that we really need to redefine our way of understanding the terms of public interest and democracy and all these kind of terms, because what does it mean, like public? Public is a very discursive term, you know. Public interest doesn't mean that Ljubica said it's like, of course, it's for all. It's definitely not for all. I don't want to go into details, and especially now when there are being many theoretical discussions how to democratize the idea of democracy. No, I think we shouldn't take those terms for granted. You know, that's one of points. You know, maybe just if you have comment upon it. Thanks.
Yeah, I think we totally agree. We all agree on that, and that was actually the point, that we need to open, I wouldn't say open, but to start a way broader discussion and rethinking of these terms. That's the first step in everything.
But I will go on another direction also in what Philip was saying about how to educate people. And is that, again, I don't think in the moment that we are, these struggles should be chosen by the adequacy of a concept or the adequacy of a certain struggle. I keep on remembering once feminist Marxist author Silvia Federici was giving a talk in Barcelona, and she was talking about wages for her housework. No, the famous campaign in the 70s. And someone in the audience said, yeah, well, wages for housework, then wages for everybody, right? Basic income. And they said like, listen, I don't really agree on this, because it's not that I don't agree on basic income. Basic income is perfect, super idea, but it's not getting traction. We didn't ask wages for housework in the 70s because we thought it was the solution. Obviously, it's not a solution to give wages to housework. But this question, why we are not having wages, made women politicize. It politicized wages. It unveiled what are, the relations between wage and production and reproduction. And it puts in crisis certain kind of paradigms so that you can advance to another paradigm, right? Then she said, this is her opinion, maybe things are changing now, but she said like, okay, if you ask for basic income, actually you are unveiling these relations, so maybe that is why it's not working, maybe it will work in the future. What is interesting of this is that each situation has a different trigger. When we question democracy, my autonomist and anarchist friends in Europe were like, guys, you are crazy. What are you doing? Reclaiming bourgeois democracy, liberal democracy? Are you nuts? And I was like, I don't know, it works. It just works. People go and say like, democracy. Okay, this is not a real democracy. Why is not a real democracy? We are sold this image on this product. We are not getting. Why? What is this thing? Why the anti-eviction movement in Spain was so successful? It's because, whatever, technical details about the law, boring things. But anyway, this was this question of how is this happening? And how is this happening? And up to the financialization of housing, the real estate, and the whole thing of, the 2008 crisis, what people realize it. So what I think it is interesting is to think, what is the trigger? For me, a trigger of why, of the very physical, think of whatever, carbon footprint, water pollution, is working if there is this jump to say, I cannot have clean water because, hey, this is how it's working. If it is out to this mediation field to try to identify this. I mean, what is the line that opens, that cracks up, that unveils the craziness? No, like there is this feminist economist, Amaya Pérez Orozco in Spain, calls la cosa escandalosa. This is scandalous thing. This compound of capitalism, colonialism, and patriarchy. This, like, what the hell is happening? What is this moment? Because this thing that what people think they need and what they want and what they have and this relation, this question with the kids. I did a small analysis of policy at local level in Spain. And there was a, federation of municipalities, whatever, they did a questionnaire. What do you think is the most important issue for the future? Environmental, this and that. And then what do you think is the most important thing for the population? Security, jobs. What are you actually spending money? Roads, highways, it's crazy. It's not even about what you think is needed or what you think the people want. Have nothing to do. So this is all levels, right? Like we are working in this system where these three levels of what we need, what I think, and what this is totally uncoupled. Let's couple it. What is this coupling? And I think this coupling works different in different places. Public space was super big, no? The squares in Zagreb, the reclamation of the waterfront. Energy could be next. No, I don't know. In Spain, I don't know how it's. I mean, I don't work in that field. I don't know how they are doing with actually, like clean energy, but I don't know, windmills are implemented everywhere. It's not even a democratic process, whatever. But I think this question of what is getting it is just is very situated, and And the other thing I wanted to say is that. When people make a municipalist platform, they always mention Barcelona. As I said, there were hundreds of platforms in the whole Spain, but Barcelona is a shiny example. But I always remember Tommy Slav saying, Anna, we learn from you, because we did a mistake and we put this figure as a head. And then he always says, we learn from you, we learn from your mistake, and we are doing it better. And I think this is one of the reasons why you should be keeping on doing things, because it opens up new imagination. So even in our case, it was not, as successful as Barcelona, but I am always very proud that Zagreb learned something, and they managed to do it better and stay more than 4 years, hopefully. Yeah,
the knowledge is, as Ljubica said, is shared among others. Is there any other comment or question? Yes, please.
I have just a comment. Thank you for your really wonderful presentations and opening important doors to all these problems. But my comment would be or would tackle what was said, that we need a cultural shift. I think that actually we need an ideological shift, and only then will cultural shift happen. I was also missing the notion of class in your presentations and your thinking. I cannot imagine an ecological and green shift without tackling the question of class and connecting the class to all these important questions. So that's all I wanted to share.
Yeah, we gather, no?
Yes,
Yeah.
you and then Ivana.
Yeah. Yeah, I was first. A comment on shifting, on the question of democracy. We should start to reimagine democracy. When we are talking about democracy, we are thinking about representative democracy, and obviously, more or less, from your experience, you had one wall in representative democracy that is making us stop in our demands. In our age of internet and technology, direct democracy is feasible again after ancient times. So now, for example, Facebook can manage in a minute to have 1 billion posts. In that situation, direct democracy is feasible again. And when we are talking about democracy, we should try to imagine direct democracy, because representative democracy is not functioning. We have people, representatives who are not experts in mining, in agriculture, and in corruption, but they are making the laws. So that was my comment.
Because we have very short amount of time, maybe we can gather some questions now. Yeah, you and then Ivana, and then allow the speakers to finally address.
Okay. So this question about participation was interesting to me, and many people said that we need to reimagine democracy. But it seems to me that people are discouraged to participate because they know that their participation won't change anything. So in order to encourage, involvement of citizens, we must increase level of power that they get through participation. And there are some examples how that could be done. One about that I learned recently, and it was especially interesting to me, is the situation where you have a deliberative pool and the government actually pledge that they will actually outcome of that deliberative pool put on voting on the parliament, or put on referendum, or implement directly. So in that way, you can motivate people because they know what will be concrete effect, that it won't be just like that some decision maker will consider that, and that means reject it. Like whenever that happens all the time. So my question is because Ljubica, I think you said that we need to be persistent in using existing participatory procedures, but maybe better ways to ask what will you get us for participation? Because we are exhausted. We want something concrete, that is rational for people to participate. And that means that benefits from participation will be higher than costs. So that could be a question also, and for you, Tomislav, because you are in position of power, you can actually do that in Zagreb now. So that is for me.
We gather them.
Ivana, and then we can finish the session.
Thank you all for the wonderful opening of the conference. It's funny that just a week ago I was looking at a performance in Belgrade and it was called Performing Democracy. It's an art piece done by, it's a collective art piece done by partners from North Macedonia, Kosovo and Serbia. Exactly the same questions were discussed or played through that social game that I was a part of. Nevertheless, at the very beginning of the conference, I found myself doing the things I wrote in the position paper I wanted to do with the conference, and it is reimagining or searching for new meanings and forms and shapes of what community is, what decision-making, policy-making is. And again, I find myself, although I've heard it so many times and read it, again, I find myself thinking about a community as this monolithic entity, although I am a part of so many communities that are obviously plural and the multiplicity and the plurality of the communities is always there frontally, but just through this panel I came to that realization. But also coming from living in or working in North Macedonia, we are at this perpetual state of reproducing policies, but even cultures that I will dare to use the term global north here. It's trying to reproduce or even emulate those policies and culture. And actually, because I'm interested in that, and the subcultural and the other microcultural phenomenon actually remind me much more of their counterparts from the global south. So this is culturally again, and this is kind of this tension that I find my society and community in. But also there's one more tension where I see policy making reshaping itself, and that is the tension between the multiplicity and the plurality of the community and the public interest, the polyvalence of public interest, but also the factual situation, the resources. Tomislav himself told how much it just costs to, again, maybe reproduce this form of decision making. And again, if democracy isn't representation, democracy also isn't participation. There are certain communities that don't want to participate and contribute, and maybe their part in certain policy-making process would be much more significant than others. So this is the tension that actually triggers me into thinking about the transformation of policy-making itself, not the policies, which are secondary.
I can only add one thing. I found all the comments very valuable, and of course there are a lot of topics that we cannot cover in one session, although it takes a lot of time already. But yes, there are a lot more topics we need to, and issues we can discuss and we need to discuss, and that's why we're here for 2 days, which is also just a start. About participation, I wanted to say that we should continue using existing mechanisms, but not to finish there. We also need to work constantly on improving them, reimagining them, changing them, and so on. So it's not or and or. There are a lot of, this is all about pluralism, everything that we talk about here. And so we have to have this pluralism in all shapes, in everything we discuss. And the other thing I wanted to say, to briefly actually comment on what Ivana said, personally, I'm into urban planning because it is about process. It's not only about the outcome, and actually outcome is just a small part, these plans and build society and build surroundings and whatever. It's about focusing and reshaping, rethinking processes, processes. So not about policies, but how do we make these policies and so on. So I just want to emphasize process is something I think that's a valuable focus here, not just the outcome.
I just want to say about those walls, you mentioned it. Well, in my case, we are started with that one lot in my neighborhood. And I try to do something. They tell me I'm alone. You can do nothing when you are alone. Okay, I organize civil organizations for my neighborhood. But they told me that's not going to happen. Then I got into politics and got into neighborhood council. Well, my opinion is not obliged to the city council. Then I got run again in the elections, and I'm now the president of those local council. But when I trying to do something, when I calling those city offices, no matter that I am president, they tell me, no, that's the wrong office. Please call Anam. I call Anam. No, that's not my job. It's Ivan. Call Ivan. Then I call Ivan. Then I call Aca, Daca, Meca, Jeca, all of these people. And at the end of the day, maybe I do one thing. We have to simplify administration and bureaucracy for that common citizen. That's the only thing we can do to the citizen, to tell them what's the procedures, what he can do, and that procedures have to be simple. That's all we can do now.
Okay. Thank you for the great speakers. I think you deserve a round of applause for them. And thank you for the audience. The comments and the inputs were also very valuable. I think we have now a 15 minutes break, and then the next session starts.